Make It, a podcast by Bonsai Creative that helps creatives in film get where they're going faster by sharing the advice, knowledge, and insights of professional creatives across the film industry. I'm your host, Chris Barkley. Hello, Chris here with another episode of the Make It podcast, and this is an Indie Talk week, and that means I'm here with my good friend and co-founder, Nicholas Buggs. Nick, say hello.
Hello. What's up, folks?
What is up, indeed?
Everything.
Full transparency, this is being recorded on June 8th. We are done with half of the year already.
Yeah, man.
It's going.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's going so fast to me.
It is.
Do you feel that, or is it just?
No, it's fast, man. I think there's so much that we're trying to cram into every day that it just goes faster and faster. And I swear, ever since 2019, the clock literally just is on speed. Right. Like it's just because we got those snaps, that finger, I always call it Thanos snap. You lost 2 years of your life, You know what I'm saying? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, look at that. That's gone. But then it just, in addition to that, it just keeps going fast. Like it just keeps going and we keep losing time. Yeah. You're watching these kids grow up, like they're getting tall. And it's like, when did that happen? Mm-hmm. And I feel like, again, it's part of this. We lost 2 years and they grew. Yeah. And now we're here again. But yeah, I feel like I can't believe it's June. But I'm happy that it's June. I'm happy that it's not October.
Yeah. I like the weather. I like that it's summertime. I'm a big summertime guy. And we know that literally the time isn't moving faster. I wonder what gives that feeling. You call it the Thanos snap. Now, I, throughout COVID, called COVID itself the ultimate Thanos snap. It felt like it just kind of picked and chose who it was going to affect and who it wasn't even going to give symptoms to.
Exactly.
Like it's
100%, man.
It's a little unusual that movie came out and then COVID happened right after it. That's a little unusual. But does anybody ever say time is moving slow?
I think it's about the busyness. And I think there's different stages of your life, like for us, our kids are in different phases. Yeah. Right. So, mine are a lot young. Well, I'm going to say a lot, but they're younger. So I'm still all the things to them. Right. So you take that and you couple it with all the other things that are happening during the day and at night, like we're doing right now, knocking stuff out. The days just get jam packed and it just feels like there's not enough time in the day to do all the things that need to get done. And it just, day A rolls into day B and it's like, well, where did that one go? And it's like, you look up, it's day C. I'm like, man, what is happening? And then you wake up and you talk to your boy and your boy tells you, it's June 8th, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty crazy. And I just told Jason, friend of the podcast and script reader here at Bonsai Creative, and sometimes contributor to the Make It podcast. I was having coffee with him and I told him my dying words are going to be, there's never enough time. Or there was never enough time.
Okay.
And it started because we left another coffee where we both were running off to the next appointment and we ran out of time. We didn't get it all said.
Yeah. And I know it's like what you were just saying is actually kind of morbid, but I just had this funny thought where it's like, you're on your deathbed and you're like, you feel like you're going to take your last breath and you're like, there was never enough time. And then you get another breath. You're like, crap. like I'm not dead yet. so then people want to talk to you. Yeah. But you can't say anything because you're like, no, those are my dying words. I can't say anything else. So if you say anything else in between, you can say it again.
You have to plan it out perfect.
That's right. You got to say it again. You got
to have enough air just for this sentence.
Right.
You have to know that. Otherwise, you're like Dave Chappelle in that one skit on Chappelle's show where it was like a mockumentary of him winning Actor of the Year or whatever, and he was playing a soldier. And he kept dying over and over again. Like, think he was dead, and he'd come back and give one more piece of advice.
Right. Exactly. That's it. It's like, well, I can't talk. Like,
I try to sneak too. But here's okay. So like, too much to do. Too much to do is the key. And I went through the process yesterday after a little bit of writing of creating what I call a non-priority list. And I've never done this before because, I'm always an optimization guy, and I've given this advice and provided this on the show and off air as well. This idea of life design is really important to me. Making a priority list is important to me. Yep. So literally doing the opposite of what I did the other day. Like you use your judgment to make, write down the 3 most important things, where if you didn't get these 3 things done, you wouldn't be able to sleep at night. And only you know what those 3 things really are. But I decided to do the opposite for the first time. And I named it the non-priority to-do list. And the reason why is because I found I was very, very cluttered and time was moving really quickly. Meaning I had so many thoughts throughout the day that I wasn't actually able to write down, that it was causing me to procrastinate almost, because I couldn't zero in on what it is I wanted to actually accomplish at all. I knew the big things already because I'd written that list down. I know what those things are, but I'm distracted from those things, from all the little things going around. And it's interesting, our podcast guest from last week, Jelante Mullins, talked about this idea of this concept of procrastination as a form of imposter syndrome.
Right.
And I resonated so hard with that. Like, oh, that's what's happening. You're trying to, you and your partner, Nick, are trying to accomplish something unbelievable. And you're trying to do it all from scratch and without, VC money or angel money or anything like that. And you've let imposter syndrome creep in enough to cause you to procrastinate, because all the things you have to do are tough. They're all tough things. They all have to be done. And you know that if you do them, there's no going back. Like you're all in this direction.
You're
so I wrote everyone go listen to that podcast episode. There's some wonderful moments of clarity within it as creatives. But back to the non-priority list. I wrote it, and it is on the order of 80, 85 lines long without duplication.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So I was like, you know what? For the next week and a half, I'm going to see what happens if I work through my non-priority list and see if it provides me clarity on my priority list.
Yeah, I often find that stuff like that really has to do with the clutter, right? So your non-priority list is about clearing the clutter, right? Because I do the same thing where, even now, for those of you who will see us at some point in this podcast world, there's slight changes to my environment, my background. It's not huge, but it's
videos on the non-priority list.
You're right. And it's because it's one of those things where I just had to shift my space around to make me more comfortable. Right. And it's something that needed to be done for a while, and I hadn't done it. I needed to clean some things out, but not doing it, I think, was creating a distraction, as you mentioned, from the priorities. Right. My head wasn't as clear as it needed to be with all the stuff that was in front of me on my desk. Right. There wasn't the right amount of feng shui going on in my office to make me feel as comfortable and as energetic as needed while getting through some late nights. Right. So that type of thing, I'm 100% with you. Those things seem annoying because it's not the priority. and you don't want to do it because, again, we just talked about it. You have so much time, only so much time in the day. You're like, well, I can't do that. I got to focus on the priority. Yep. But if not doing that thing diminishes your ability to do the priority thing, then you need to go ahead and do that non-priority.
You need to handle up on but not just one. You need to do like 5 or 6, because the non-priority things tend to be things you can knock out pretty quick, or the things like, I'm supposed to mail this thing 5 days ago and run down to the post office. So let me just go ahead and run, every item on that list that has to do with me being in my car or going to a place outside the house or outside the office. Let's just do that.
Right.
And then you get them all knocked out in one afternoon, and then you go to the next day, because I completely relate to that. And, being somewhat studious and knowing how productive you can be is a bit of a curse, because when you don't reach that bar several weeks in a row, you start to think, like what's going on? Like, like what's my supplementation like? Is it my diet? Am I going to the gym enough? What's going on? Like, cause how far you can go. So it's a bit of, and I'm sure people feel like this all the time as they sort of like, there are a lot of people in corporate America that get aged out, for example. And in their mind, they're like, well, I haven't changed. Like, I'm still that 25-year-old that can go out and kill the well accounts and the senior accounts. But for some reason, my performance doesn't match the new 25-year-old that's in my place now that I'm, let's say, 55 or 65. And it's really frustrating once you've made an achievement or gone really far in a particular direction. You always want to be able to keep hitting that. I mean, same thing with athletics. Yep. You just want to keep hitting the skill level you always hit. And then sometimes there are things that get in your way, like your body, your age, athletics, your fitness, whatever, that diminish that. And it's super duper frustrating. Before I forget, I do want to share tonight's bottle. I am drinking a red, as I do, and this is a Mont Versa. There you go in the camera. Versa Cinto Rossi, 2019, from Italy. It is a 40% Merlot, 30% Cabernet Franc, and 30% Cabernet Sauvignon mix. And it is delightful.
You enjoy the blend?
Yeah, I typically enjoy red blends, but this isn't like a traditional red blend that you'd get at the supermarket. I do recommend it. It is choice. If you have the means, do partake. Cheers. Cheers.
Thank you so much.
We have some cool topics.
Yep, we do.
Very topical things. I'm using the word top a lot because we're going to talk about the top movie in the theaters right now, the movie that has topped all the other films and have given hope to the theater system, and what I've always called one of the last bastions of fair market value for independent film that's good enough to make a theater run of any kind. And that is Top Gun Maverick. And never in, I believe, movie history. So this is I need to be fact checked on this. I'm saying that up front. But in my preliminary research, there has never been a wider gap between the number 1 film in the theater and the number 2 film.
Yep.
So opening weekend for Top Gun was 156 million to be clear.
Yep.
And then Doctor Strange was number 2 at 20.
Right.
So, wow, you're talking about a $136 million gap between first and second place. And it persisted the following weekend when Top Gun did 90 million. And then I want to say Doctor Strange did 9 million. So an $81 million gap between first and second. So what's happening is unprecedented. And we're going to talk a little bit about that film and the recent legal trouble it's getting in as a warning to independent filmmakers. We're also going to talk about a potentially sensitive subject, but we haven't had a chance to be on an Indie Talk together and really speak to the Uvalde shooting and how it affects creatives and what the expectation is for entertainers and for creatives. So we're going to talk about a couple of instances of that, but I'd love to start with Top Gun. Nick, can you break down what this lawsuit is against Top Gun Maverick?
Yeah, it's all about rights, and it's something that, I don't think you and I had ever really considered, when it comes to, once you sell your rights, right, to a story. And I kind of want to start with that first and just talk about the fact that, I don't know how many people know or knew prior to this instance or this issue that Top Gun was based off an article. Right. And you and I have kind of talked about this before because, we're all about finding new opportunities or just opportunities for filmmakers to leverage intellectual property to make films. Right. And I think a lot of people think about books. They might think about existing television shows. Comics. They might even thinking about, comics. Right. But I don't think a lot of people think about articles. And the fact that that's not something new, right? That is something that happens a lot, whether it's in movies or television. And that's a place that independent filmmakers can look to, especially if the story was, very well received, right? So that's where Top Gun came from. It came from an article. It was in 1983. And the article was, I believe it was called Top Guns. And, so that was optioned for Top Gun. And, now we are here, 30 some odd years later, after the first film came out. And, the folks who have the rights to that article, the family are now saying, hey, look, you guys don't have the rights to this. Well, why? Because there's I wouldn't call it a loophole, right? But it's the copyright law that says that you can basically take the rights back after a certain number of years.
35 years.
Right? They revert back.
Yep. Right?
So they reverted back, and the family knew this, and the family told Paramount, hey, just let you know, rights have reverted back to us. Mm-hmm. So, we need to have a conversation about what you guys are going to do. And I guess that didn't go anywhere.
Yep.
Right? So the family was like, okay, yeah, we're going to send a cease and desist. Like, cut it out. We know what y'all are doing. Don't release this movie. And they did it anyway. Mm-hmm. So now you've got this movie that's made $600 million. And there's a lawsuit saying, you all have violated our rights to this story. And this is a derivative work of that story, right? That was protected under our original contract and is protected under copyright law. So now what? Right. So this is still out there. Like I don't know if much movement has happened because I feel like I'm reading the same articles over and over again, just stating that this has happened. Yeah. And I want to tell you something real quick.
That's that new journalism you were talking about a few Indie Talks ago.
Exactly. And I want to tell you something real quick. If you were to look up right now, like if you were to Google, now I don't use Google as much as I use DuckDuckGo, but if you look up Top Gun, because of what's happening in the world and the thing that we're going to talk about soon about, Uvalde, you search Top Gun, you might not find articles about Top Gun.
Yeah.
Right. You're going to find articles about gun rights and the Uvalde shooting. And it's an interesting thing because normally you would think you type in Top Gun and that would be at least half of the articles.
Yeah.
And it's not, unfortunately, because of where we are today. But again, the whole Top Gun situation comes down to copyright law and folks, trying to protect their rights or maintain their rights. And, as you and I kind of look at it, it's like, well, Paramount obviously they got the letters, right? This isn't new to them. They decided to push forward, likely because they believe that they can lawyer up and win this battle. Or even if they don't win, maybe what they expect to pay out is, within means.
Yeah. And there's a couple of loopholes here, right? They needed to finish the film before the 35-year deadline is up.
Right. Which was in 2020 at the time.
Right. And they claim that they got the majority or the great majority of it completed, and that because of COVID, they weren't able to finish it until May of 2021.
Right.
The question is, what judge will they get? And will that judge see that as a valid exception to what looks like a pretty straightforward copyright infringement or rights infringement case? And the reason why I'm even considering it is because of all the legal maneuvering and manipulation across a variety of subjects that took place due to COVID. I mean, really think about what we did the last 2 years to respond to this unprecedented virus and epidemic,
right.
Pandemic that turned into epidemic. Like, we did a lot of things we would never do. We're paying for it now in the stock market. You know, we allowed people to stay home from work. We allowed people to make more money by not working than they did when they were working. We did all these things. Yep. We provided, a stipend for our festivals in film, for example, because they weren't able to get the sponsorship dollars or the grant dollars they would normally get during the pandemic. For example, lots of festivals got PPP loans and free money and grants because of that. Those are unprecedented things that never happened before. And so, maybe there's a chance a judge says this was an unprecedented time. It's a 1 in 1,000 year pandemic, and we need to make an exception in this case. I wouldn't be satisfied with that. I think the other sort of issue at hand is what was the original deal, which we need to get our hands on, I guess, at some point, but it might be difficult. What was the original deal? I know that there was a credit, but it wasn't a producer credit given to the author of the article in the first Top Gun. So what was the payment? What was the credit status? And how derivative was the first Top Gun of the article? All right. Obviously it was close enough to need to option it, right?
Right. Correct.
But just because this new one's called Top Gun Maverick doesn't necessarily directly mean it's derivative of the first movie or the article. And correct. So it'll also come down to what those definitions are. And, it comes down to being able to prove that it's highly derivative and that you had the rights to the story they told. In music, it's different. In music, you can analyze it through grace notes, right? You can actually put two songs on and say, look, the chords are exactly the same, at the exact same rhythm, in the exact same key, all that stuff. And look, the melody that the singer singing is the same melody. Like, they stole the song from me. And, I always point to the Paramore Olivia Rodrigo case. Yeah. That happened so fast. They were done with that quick. It was easy to prove. But in film, it's a little different, right? Like, was Deep Impact derivative of Armageddon? And whatever IP they got, do they both owe the original IP owner for that story? Because they were basically the same story. The
same movie at the same time. Movie.
So there'll be a question of that.
I think there's the question of, I think there's a cap on the damages. Mm-hmm. And Paramount has basically adjudicated for that. Because I think that if they had negotiated it, then they might have had to pay out more. So they're like, what if we infringe? Right?
That conversation happened.
Yeah. What do we have to pay? What's the cap on something like that? Because I don't know that anyone else could have made it. So, for example, if the rights did revert back, would anyone else have been able to make this film?
Yeah. And would there have been money to make for the rights owner?
Right. That's what I mean. So could they have gone somewhere else with that? Could they have sold it to another studio?
They could have, but they wouldn't have been able to get those actors. They wouldn't have been able to get,
right. So would you have been able to make it? So anyway, it wouldn't have made the money it's making now. Exactly. So my point is, did they actually take anything from the family, as in, other than their right to be able to negotiate with Paramount, but did they actually prevent the family from moving forward with someone else?
I'm curious about that, but I don't even know if the law works like that. I don't know if it's allowed to work in that hypothetical realm.
Because you're preventing the person who owns the rights from being able to leverage their rights.
Right. I think the assumption is that they, by moving forward, they prevented the family from operating, with their own intent and
exactly,
with sovereignty and their own volition.
But you can't say how much they would have made, right? That's the challenge.
Right? You can't say that. And that's why I wonder how much they got paid when it was all legal. Because, if I'm a judge, maybe I'm using that as a benchmark for how much damages are awarded. Because I do think they're going to win some damages. I think.
Oh, yeah.
I think the rights case is so concrete just based on the timeline that they're owed something, but I don't think they're owed half the movie.
Oh, yeah, no.
I think the point that you're making, we have to also honor the filmmakers and the producers and the EPs that put the movie together. Right. But I will say this, shame on Paramount. They got the letters. They had the cease and desist. They could have done it the right way. And instead they chose a route that personifies why people hate studios and why people hate big corporations, because they tried to Bigfoot the little guy that did it the right way, that had the rights, and they said, you know what? Try us.
Yeah.
And they just kept going.
And that's a key thing here that I also kind of wanted to bring up is that, how many lawsuits have there been, right, over the past couple of years against major studios? Like, we never heard about this before. Yeah. It's happening like crazy. You got, outside of the lawsuits, was it Neve Campbell's not doing Scream 6 or whatever it is because they're not going to pay her enough? She's like, you guys are not paying me what I deserve for this thing.
Right. Yeah.
So there's a pushback against this type of behavior from the studios that is new, right? And I'm curious, what's the impact going to be?
I can't remember what the TV shows were, but maybe it was Bones and some other TV show on Fox where they were just robbing these guys.
Yeah.
They just weren't paying the royalties. They just literally weren't paying what the contract said to pay. And it's a shame because, again, it's the thing that me and you aim to eventually be able to tear down or at least improve, which is there's no real excuse or reason for the financial part of the film industry to be so shrouded.
Right.
There's no excuse or reason I've heard that comes off as legitimate. I just haven't heard a legitimate reason that could not be overcome by technology or logic or both or honesty in that way. And yet we still play this silly game with each other where it's like you have to always be auditing the person who's paying you and the person who's distributing the payment. And it's just like, It's a nightmare, especially if you have a bunch of films. And now you have to hire somebody who constantly audits the person that is, okay, I'm going to audit the distributor. And then I'm going to audit the person the distributor's paying, which is a producer probably. And then I'm going to audit the producer's camera accountant. Just to make sure that I got every penny.
Right.
And it's ridiculous because if you've ever seen one of these reports from a film, first of all, they come to you in the worst possible condition. We're talking about 7 font. So size 7 or 6 font, the smallest possible font. They are often unreadable, blurry reports. And they're scanned in and they're all sort of fucking, it's just like, there's no part of that that's necessary, but it is an industry standard to ensure that, it is as difficult as possible to trace the money you're owed. And when you get those reports, you kind of are saying, I accept that this is true.
Yeah, you have to, right?
Until the point that I hire an auditor to come find out specifically what I'm owed and not owed. And I would be willing to guarantee, for example, in our films, Nick, that we haven't gotten the money we deserve to the penny. But the question is, would the auditor find out that it's something like $24.73, and they're like, damn, we paid so much for this auditor to get our $23 to prove a point. But I think it all this speaks to the point of, at the end of the day, we're going to find out what these damages are. It's all going to go down in court.
Yep.
And there would be no case whatsoever if the rights holders, that family, the Yanas, I think I might be mispronouncing it. I can't remember their names, their last name. It's YONAH. I got to look it up.
I can't remember if it's AH or AY.
AY, something like that. They had the foresight to get legal, to get great legal, and to know the timelines and to be on top of it. And they knew how Paramount was going to act. They sent the cease and desist letters. And so when we talk to the indie film community, it's no joke. You have to get a legal team up front, and it has to be the kind of lawyer and kind of team that isn't just checking for what's legal and not legal, but checking for what's advantageous for you.
Yeah, what's in your best interest. Yep. Yeah. And it's early on, like you said, like it's in the beginning. You know, don't try to scramble for a lawyer, right? A lawyer. Yeah. Right. Any lawyer when something happens, because it could happen, not, on the side where you're getting a lawyer to sue someone else, but it could be the other way around where someone's suing you, and you're going to be looking for someone to help you out at the last minute, someone that you don't know, you don't have a relationship with. Our big thing is have that relationship early. You're making this film, you're making this product, you're putting this thing out there in the world. Just get the relationship. Yep. Because you may not need them. You may not have to pay anything for some time. But if you have the relationship early, you maintain that, then if you do need them, they're available to you. They understand you. They know you. They know what your film is. Don't wait until the last minute.
Right. You don't, because you never know what your art's going to do. You put your art out in the world, and a lot of crazy things can happen.
That's right. Especially if it's successful.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a story I heard from Brian Owens, who runs Calgary International Film Festival. And he was talking about this documentary that he loved. And then he shared that documentary with Al Gore, who then shared that documentary with Bill and Melinda Gates. And when that documentary did its screening in Cairo, which is what the documentary was about, I believe, workers in Cairo, they were surprised to find that Bill and Melinda Gates were there and presented them with $1 million check. $1 million on the spot. That's what your art can do. And you don't know what's going to happen when you make good art. Mariah Carey sued 30 years after the fact for All I Want for Christmas. Now, what were you doing the last 30 years if you're just now suing? Well, you're waiting for that. You're waiting for that song to become the greatest Christmas song of all time, so you can get.
It was already the greatest 10, 15 years ago.
I agree.
Most played. Period.
But to your point, it could be you that's getting sued, depending on what your art does in the future. And the last thought I really had about this before we move forward, Nick, is that the other fact of the matter is something we touched on just briefly earlier, which is Paramount thought, what's the maximum damages? Let's lawyer up, as you put it.
That's right.
And as I put it, just, hey, we're going to Bigfoot you, and we're moving forward, and we're not worried, right? Well, this is the attitude that most sharks in independent film take. And it's even more valid, right? Like, as an indie filmmaker, oftentimes you don't have enough burn rate or money to afford a lawyer to go after something that's rightfully yours when you've met some shark or some grifter or fraudster or con man or woman in the industry. And they are banking on the fact that you have no recourse whatsoever. and they're going to get away with it. They're going to get away with the fraud. They're cool with it. They don't have a moral qualm with it whatsoever. In their mind, and I've talked to some of these people, in their mind, this is the movie business. This is just how the movie business works. Yeah. There's takers and, there's
makers.
And there's makers and there's winners and there's losers. And nothing could be further from the truth. The fact of the matter is those people are really toxic. And they prey on the fact that they think you're not going to lawyer up and you're not going to have your ducks in a row and you're not going to have the resources it takes to defend yourself. So
yeah, and that's the key right there. You just said it. It's the fact. I think we've talked to enough filmmakers over the last several years to know that many of them do not have these relationships with legal. It's just a mistake. Again, it's not going to kill you, to have the relationship. Right. That's the key. You need the protections. You're not going to have to pay a bunch of money up front. It's not going to kill your bank account to have that relationship. Right. Yep. To have those conversations. It's worth it up front to have something in your back pocket if something comes down. And
keep your ear to the ground on things that are happening with Bonsai Creative for the balance of this year. We might have an answer to that problem. Let's talk about Matthew McConaughey.
Okay.
He's having a good year and a half. He's transcending his profession quite a bit.
Yeah, he has for some time, but yeah.
In a major way. Green Lights was, regardless of all the parodies, because people like doing his voice, Green Lights was a great book. And if you're having a hard time getting off your ass, you start reading that book, especially as an actor. Or maybe a director. I prefer the audiobook because it's read by Matthew, so the stories are more
by Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah. And now he has this speech at the White House, and I tell you what, man, he had me a little broken up. And when he pounds that podium, and almost loses it himself, I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm a softie, and all I could do was imagine those victims, and all I could do is imagine them in my mind and try to put myself in their shoes, which is impossible. Not the shoes of the victims necessarily, but maybe the shoes of the parents.
The parents, yep.
And man, it was so powerful. And there are people who would say, well, why would an actor get sort of carte blanche to go speak at the White House? But I would argue in this situation, he's from the town.
That's right.
And he's getting slowly but surely more involved in politics every year. And I think he's just more than an actor now, Nick. Yeah.
I mean, he was, looking to be the next governor of Texas. I think he pulled out of that. So you're right. He's more than an actor, but to most of us, that's who he is. And again, he's an actor, he's a writer, he's part owner of a soccer team or owner of a soccer team. He does a lot of different things. Yeah. But he is a public personality. Yeah. He's a celebrity. Yeah. Right. That's the key thing is whatever he is, he's a celebrity. And he had this stage at the White House to speak. And it was interesting. What was really interesting about that is that it was not a partisan speech, right? That's what you find a lot of at the White House. Whoever is in.
That's what most people were expecting.
Yeah,
they were like,
exactly.
Oh, he's at the White House. This is going to be anti-gun.
Yep. Or at least, it's going to be, it's democratically leaning, that kind of thing. And he came and basically went straight down the middle, and I think that was refreshing. I think it was important. The stories that he told, the way that he told them was amazing. And, I kind of look at this and I'm curious, one about the celebrity of it. And again, he's an actor and you're like, is there something there where the celebrities of the world, not the politicians, right, are the ones who are changing things, right? So we just talked about people suing the major studios.
Yeah.
Right. Well, what is that really about? Well, that's about people having the balls, the clout, the confidence, the courage to go up against the machine.
Yeah.
Because just like you just said, this is the business. And there's people who are saying, okay, business, I'm going to sue you, right? We're going to put this out there. And not only am I going to sue you and hopefully get damages, but everyone's going to know that you've been sued.
Yeah.
Right. Everyone's going to know what it is you're doing. And we're going to put that on Front Street. Like, this isn't something we're settling behind the scenes. No, this is public.
Yeah.
And I think this is what I'm hopeful, I don't know. You got to have some level of hope in this world. Right. And when you have folks like Matthew McConaughey come up and have this middle ground discussion, I think that makes me hopeful. And if it takes celebrities to come in, because, it's like when Trump got into office, well, what was he to many people? He was a celebrity, right? Yeah. Exactly. So, when you're looking to make a change, left, right, or middle, maybe sometimes that's what's necessary, right? Is that you have celebrity. And, so we'll see. We'll see where it goes. But yeah, I was equally as moved by his speech. The thing was only 20 minutes long.
20 minutes, yeah. 20 and a half minutes.
Yeah, man, it felt longer, right? It felt longer because, you were sitting in the emotion of it. And, it's a terrible situation. I think he did a great job. But I just wanted to make sure that we did have that conversation about the fact that, Matthew McConaughey stood up, did a great job, middle of the kind of road, and he just, we'll see what happens next. And I think this is, he made, of course, not the only celebrity, right, who's getting engaged in this conversation. The other one that we wanted to talk about tonight, Abbott Elementary.
Yeah. Right? Great show.
Quinta Brunson, having to talk to people on Twitter, in the interwebs and saying, hey, look, folks, I'm not doing an episode about a school shooting, no matter how many of you all ask.
And it's a comedy. It's not, but it's not her job to try to have her art reflect our sometimes sick reality.
Exactly. I think that's her point is literally the opposite. Right. But let me.
And it's also a mockumentary show. So you add another layer of difficulty in the writing to try to hit the right tone. It serves no purpose because if you do it wrong, you ruin your show.
Oh, 100%. So it doesn't even fit the model. But let me just talk to this a little bit.
Please.
There is a little bit of value in what the people who are asking for this, there's some value in the request, right? So one of the requests that she put out there, she showed the text, right? She put it out on Twitter. The person was basically saying, hey, put this, how about having this as one of your episodes as a means of getting these politicians to listen?
Yeah.
That's not terrible. You know what I'm saying? That's not a terrible thought, not a terrible idea. Because I know that Quinta Brunson, when she responded, she was like, you guys need to go talk to your politicians and get them to change legislation. And instead of doing that, you're coming to me for entertainment.
Yeah.
Well, that's not what that person was alluding to. They weren't saying they desired entertainment. They were saying, hey, you've got a platform, right? You have a platform to put something out there that might really bring this home at a time when we need this type of change. So I hear where she's coming from, right? Everything you and I just talked about, the platform is wrong for it. Like it's a mockumentary. It wouldn't work. It would probably destroy the show.
Yeah.
Right? You'd have to end the show after that.
There's a lot more ways to do it wrong than do it right.
Exactly. So 100% agree with that. But I'm not going to say that because I think she said it. She was like, you people are sick. Y'all are crazy. I don't know if I'd go that far. I see what they're trying to do.
They're hurt. They're traumatized. They're part of the same society that creates school shooters.
Yeah.
Right. And that get cornered and sort of feel isolated and shamed. And then they do something unforgivable. That they're part of that same society. I think there's an assumption that just because the media reports it or that the politicians will see it or give it weight. Politicians are generally very, for lack of a better word, judgmental about entertainment. I mean, I don't think they view it as critical viewing. Most politicians, except for the ones you hear about on late night TV where they're like, how did they get into office? Most of them are from academia, and they spent their life studying and working and writing, and they don't watch TV. And they may not see the show. And if you don't think that the media companies of this country have been bought and sold, I would ask you to go do your research, and you'd find out that most media companies were bought and sold by large corporations in the 30s and 40s. So this game through the media has been over for a long time. And so, again, there's a limit to what the show could do versus what she could do.
Exactly.
Same as Matthew.
Yep.
If he makes a movie about it, he might win an award and it might become a media thing, but he was more powerful using his own voice because he gave the speech that we all wanted to give, because he stayed down the middle and he felt the way that almost all Americans feel. I have this saying, I actually tweeted this other day. Most people, Democrats and Republicans I meet, are actually left-leaning or right-leaning libertarians. That's actually what they are when you talk to them. But when you meet them, they tell you they're one or the other.
Right.
And so what you find is most people are moderate. Most people are somewhere in the middle. That's
exactly what Matthew McConaughey said.
And Matthew was right about that. And you said something earlier. You said, do we look to celebrity? Maybe we look to celebrity to make change or to change the minds of politicians. No, celebrities have the power. It may turn out that they have the power to make the change that the everyday people have allowed themselves to lose. And that's where we might need the Quinta Brunsons and the Matthew McConaughey's to step up and say, maybe you don't use your platform, but maybe your show platform, or maybe use your celebrity platform to get access into doors that we didn't have before. So I think the more fair request to say, hey, will you link up with me if I create this foundation or this, or if I write this bill, or if I do this protest in real life, versus use your show that was probably your dream come true to help me with my agenda or whatever it is I'm trying to do, philanthropically.
I think that's why she had the response she had.
Yeah, and by the way, if you want a piece of entertainment, and I hate using that word now because it's kind of like maybe they weren't looking for entertainment, as she said,
exactly. Yep.
As Quinta said. But if you're looking for something that touches on that, Emil Guiardo, who we've had on this podcast, he has a short film on HBO Max. It's called 1, 2, 3, All Eyes on Me.
That's right.
And it's one of the most powerful short films you're ever going to watch. And it's about school shootings. And
there's a caveat
on point. It is so tonally correct that I almost shudder recommending it. But if you're out there,
that's the caveat, man.
If you're out there wanting that, and you're on the side of the people that are tweeting at Quinta, then that's the one for you.
Right, and that's what I was going to say. That's the caveat to that, is that it is raw.
Yeah, it's raw.
Right, there's no sugarcoating that situation whatsoever, and that was the intent behind the film. And it's difficult. I watched it because of Emil, and
well, it was our job to watch it.
From a
to a degree, yeah.
Yeah, but from a filmmaking perspective, he does a wonderful job. Mm-hmm. So that was, yes, that was amazing from a filmmaking standpoint, but it leaves you in a certain mind space, right? Headspace that is uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. So if you were to desire to understand the terror of it, right? And if you're in a space where you want to, right, if you want to understand the non-graphic horror of it, then that is definitely the film to watch. Again, HBO Max, 1, 2, 3, All Eyes on Me by Emil Gallardo. And yeah, it's...
Yeah. Let us know. Let us know what you think once you watch that. The last thing I'll say about this before we wrap up, man, is what he asked for and recommended in the speech, for the most part, was completely reasonable.
I agree.
I don't have any qualms whatsoever pushing the legal age to get a gun back to 21. None at all.
Yeah.
I've met the young
specific
18,
to a certain type of gun, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't even mind it if it was all guns. The problem is that would mess with the military's ability to draft at 18.
There you go.
but what does? But I was around for the Afghanistan war after 9/11, and there were. I mean, obviously I was because I'm still here, but I had friends that went into that war that were 18 and they died almost immediately because they're a child, basically, mentally. I think we get ourselves in so much trouble as a society when we say this person's a child because they're 17 and this person's an adult because they're 19.
Right.
No, who are they? Who are they mentally? Right. What have they been trained to do? Where did they grow up? What access to resources did they have? I've met some really adult 16-year-olds, like my sister Angie, who had a kid at 16. She was an adult. She had adult shit going on at 16. Right. And then I've met 20-year-old guys who still act 14.
Right.
You know, it's all boogers and fart jokes. And they're 20. Yep. They're not, you know, so everybody's different. So pushing that back to 21, no problem with it whatsoever. I think a red flag law, that's a slippery slope. I think that's too much. I think that's too far. But to move that age back to 21 flags are, right? Well, that's the problem, because it starts reasonable and then it gets unreasonable, right? So it becomes Siri hearing you say a word, and then now you're on a red flag list. That's not the way it should work. And we are already in the age of AI. So
yeah, and I think we
can't allow the red flag stuff.
Yeah, if you associate it with background, if you associate the red flag with the background check, then that's a whole different story, right? Because there are things that can be, again, flagged in a background check that should preclude people from having any weapon or weapons of that type.
Yeah, and maybe there are laws that allow it to be reviewed so that it doesn't become a slippery slope. I mean, I think there's a chance for it to work, but let's not bite off. This is what happens every time. We ask for so much that it becomes unreasonable to get anything.
You're right.
Yep. Let's just get background checks. How about just start there?
Yeah.
Or 21. That's fine with me. Like let's start there and see where it goes. Because the other thing that's happening, you know, in concert with all this, is that the funding for mental health institutions has plummeted over the last few decades. And so what happens when you have a mental illness, and my father worked at a mental hospital from the day he was 18 to the day he retired, worked there 30 straight years. I watched that hospital get defunded. If you have a mental illness, you go in, you get treated, probably heavily with drugs. When your funding and insurance runs out, you're put back on the streets. Your family doesn't want to deal with you oftentimes. Oftentimes you have no family. Oftentimes there are other mental illnesses in your family. Yeah. And so you end up homeless on the street, or you end up in a home. Okay? And then all they're going to say on the news after you have your incident is, oh, he was a loner. Oh, he had problems. He had this record. What we used to do is we used to give these folks a place to stay for life, and we made it a community. And if we don't get back to that, it might not matter what gun laws we have.
Yeah, and that's what, again, it's another one of Matthew McConaughey's points, you know, is that we need, you know, better access to or better funding for mental health services. So we'll see what happens. You know, again, we don't want to get too deep into this. I would like to leave it on.
Let's go deep.
No, I would like to leave it on a somewhat high note, or at least a light note. A light note. Okay. And the light note is this. I challenge, okay, if you are listening right now, I challenge you. Don't Google what I'm about to say. Don't try to look it up. Don't ask somebody. Okay. Right now, as you're listening. Okay. I want you to maybe get a pen or just do it out loud. Just say it out loud. Okay. I want you to spell McConaughey. Just do it. I want to see if you can do it. I don't think you can. I don't know if you. we all know who he is, but I don't think you can spell his last name. Don't think you can do it.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say something like, don't Google Tub Girl. Whatever you do,
you're right.
Don't Google that. And don't click video.
No, right now, just spell it. As you heard me right now, just do it. Just spell it out loud. And then after you spelled it, or at least attempted to, check it out. You can Google it and see if you got it right.
We'd love to get some screenshots of that at contact@bonsai.film. I think that would be great. Or you can maybe even send us those images via DM, which we love, at _ Bonsai Creative on Instagram and on Twitter. We are also on TikTok, as it turns out. Did you know that, Nick?
I knew that.
Yeah, turns out we're on TikTok now. We put little videos of our podcast, little clips on there. I think it's very valuable, little bite-sized morsels of advice and goodness from our podcast guests and from our indie talks. I think it's delicious. Little industry insights and mistakes in the making are going to show up there as well. And we are also _ Bonsai Creative on TikTok as well. If you want to reach out to Nick, by the way, and send him a screenshot of when you Google Tub Girl after McConaughey, and please do Tub Girl right after that. And send those videos and images to Nick at bonsai.film.
And do nothing of the sort.
That's NICK.
Right.
Not DICK.
Right.
That's NICK at bonsai.film, those Tub Girl videos. And then if you want to reach out directly to me, I am at Flaming Your Heart on Twitter, and I answer all questions and all queries on Twitter for sure. And last but certainly not least, in terms of ways to contact us, it is www.bonsai.film. You can find out everything you need to know about the Make It podcast, what we do on Indie Talks, our industry insights, Make It podcast, which I said twice now, and Bonsai Creative in general. So it's there for you to enjoy. And if you want to support this podcast and the effort we put in week week out, day in, day out, I mean, you heard my non-priority list. It's insane. Feel free to join True Fans and our bi-weekly newsletter, Industry Insights. You can do that again at www.bonsai.film, and you can find the link for True Fans. And donations start at only $5 a month. Unbelievable. And they go up to whatever you feel is fair. So please help us out. We'd love you for it. It means the world to us. Rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you can rate podcasts. And that means the world to us as well. And it helps other listeners find us and, us spread the good word around the world. So with that long monologue and post-amble, Nick, can you give us and leave us with the credo?
Of course. This has been great. Thanks, man. I appreciate you. All the listeners out there, appreciate you guys too. And with that, we'll say, be better, be creative, be engaged.
And thank you for listening. Nick, talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. We'll do it again. It's always fun.
Peace.
Yeah, man. Take it easy.
Be good.
You've been listening to the Make It podcast. To find out more information about this week's topics, including links to relevant blog posts, projects, and indie creatives, please visit our website at www.bonsai.film. If you haven't already, you can join our podcast community on Apple Podcasts or the podcast app of your choice by searching for Make It Bonsai Creative, and the show will pop right up. You now have the opportunity to support the production of this podcast. If you love Make It and are a true fan of what we're trying to accomplish in the indie film community, please visit www.bonsai.film and click Contribute. Contributions start at only $5 monthly. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at _Bonsai Creative and on Facebook by searching for Bonsai Creative. You can provide feedback to us via email at contact@bonsai.film, and you can follow me, Chris, on Twitter at FlamingYourHeart. That's FlamingYurHeart. And of course, if you're looking to take a big step towards your filmmaking success, go to www.bonsai.film and click on Services to explore a variety of offerings from keynotes and panels to pitch readiness assessments and so much more. You have everything to gain. Until next time, be better, be creative, be engaged, and thank you for listening.